The 1960s, and more so in the 70s, saw a rise in not only bizarre, violent crimes, but also reporting on these crimes in detail in both the newspaper and as censorship for televisions began to relax on many cable news stations. Utilising the media, many police forces involved the public in massive manhunts. The new division in the FBI began to form, which eventually ended up coining the term serialized killer, or as we know it, serial killer. Since then, people's interest in these terrible and morbid stories has only grown, with entire channels like ID putting out shows and documentaries left and right, delivering to you all the bloody gruesome details. So we here at Fat Ninja have decided to put together a list of some of the more interesting ones we've seen, so you and your forensic crime hounds can fill up your watch list. But before we begin, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to making videos with you in mind. With that being said, I am your host Sarah, and here are 10 horrifying serial killer documentaries. Enjoy. Number 1. Dear Zachary. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about a father, is a rather riveting and heart-wrenching documentary about the person who was Andrew Bigby and his tragic murder by his ex. The documentary was put together by one of Andrew's close long-time friends, Kurt Quen. Quen studied film at the University of Southern California. Andrew supported his close friend and his aspiring filmmaker, even donating a substantial amount of money to him. Quen started documenting Andrew's life when he learned of his girlfriend's pregnancy with Zachary. Dear Zachary really reflects the impact the everyday person can have on the world and people around them. The documentary portrays Andrew as a charming, smart, fun and loving person, which I don't doubt. Even if the documentary was a lie, Quen crafts an extremely convincing narrative without feeling manipulative. Ultimately, Dear Zachary is for Andrew's son, Zachary, to show him the incredible man his father was. It's a rather touching story as Quen goes far and wide to find every bit of footage of Andrew's life. He reached out to everyone who knew Andrew to get the interview. I will say this too, Dear Zachary takes a dark turn and the score will get under your skin. Even though it's a documentary, Quen employs a lot of effective cinematic techniques. It also is a scathing criticism of the justice system. You can stream the tense documentary on Amazon, Pluto, Google, YouTube and Fandango. Number 2. Crazy, Not Insane. Crazy Not Insane is an HBO original documentary that premiered at the Copenhagen International Documentary Festival in March of 2020. It later aired on HBO in November of 2020 and was met with rave reviews. The documentary follows Dr. Lewis, renowned psychiatrist. If Dr. Lewis looks familiar, her and her research has been used in many high-profile cases, most notably Ted Bundy. Dr. Lewis' expertise is a violent individual with dissociative disorders, DID. Crazy Not Insane sees Dr. Lewis examine and assess various violent murderers. She wants to know why serial killers do what they do and what objective, qualitative things they have in common. One of the prominent findings from her research is what she discovered in the examination of the brain with an MRI. Dr. Lewis argues that most violent criminals experience trauma and abuse as a child. Physical evidence of this can show up in the brain as scars, but the brain scan for these murderers is different. Crazy Not Insane is narrated by Academy Award-winning actress Laura Dern. Dern's most notable work is as Dr. Ellie Sattler in the Jurassic Park franchise. Laura Dern narrates Crazy Not Insane as Dr. Dorothy Lewis. You can watch this documentary on Max. Number 3. Mommy Dead and Dearest. Mommy Dead and Dearest is an HBO documentary films presentation. It first aired on HBO May of 2017. The film was produced by Andrew Rossi, the new Emmy-nominated director, writer and producer for the Andy Warhol Diaries in 2022. Mommy Dead and Dearest tells a story of the aftermath of Dee Dee Blanchard's murder. It is a unique case to say the least. Dee Dee was murdered at the hands of her daughter's boyfriend Nicholas Godejohn, and her daughter Gypsy Rose Blanchard was an accomplice. However, the monster in the scenario was actually Dee Dee, as well as Godejohn, but more on him in a bit. Gypsy's mother, Dee Dee, is a sociopath. She basically spent the entirety of her daughter's life convincing her she was all forms of sick, and that included leukemia and muscular dystrophy. The documentary referred to this as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome being when someone convinces other people that they are sick for attention. So Dee Dee was convincing people her own daughter was sick, not only to control her daughter, but to manipulate people around her. Dee Dee even forced her daughter to use a wheelchair in public. It's quite bad. Gypsy was psychologically abused and threatened with physical violence. Now the boyfriend Nicholas Godejohn also was looking for someone naive to take advantage of. His whole MO screamed abuser and psychopath, toxic male. Godejohn also physically committed Dee Dee's murder. You can catch this wild, true story on Max. Number 4. Chaos, the Manson Murders. Netflix recently dropped a documentary on the notorious serial killer who didn't actually physically kill anyone himself, Charles Manson. The documentary is called Chaos, the Manson Murders. Despite being one of the most infamous killers, I ironically knew very little about Charles Manson, other than that he convinced others to murder for him. And he also murdered actress Sharon Tate, one of Manson's most high-profile murders. I learned from Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's hard for many people to grasp how someone can convince another person to murder another person. If you look at history, or even now, the cult minds so many people have, and the deep-rooted cruelty within humanity, it's not difficult to grasp the atrocities man can commit. Chaos, the Manson Murders divulges its information about Charles Manson briskly and even cinematically. It was based on the 2019 non-fiction book Chaos Charles Manson, The CIA and the Secret History of the 60s by Tom O'Neill and Dan, I'm so sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Dan Pipenbring. Not that I think the documentary is bad, but its connecting of Charles Manson to some government conspiracy reeks of propaganda, which is poor journalism in a time where false information spreads like wildfire. The documentary is still that Charles Manson was an extremely charismatic man and was very confident. Catch this on Netflix. Number 5. Scream, the true story. The first episode of the 3rd season of Shock Docs delves into the real-life story that inspired the acclaimed mega-hit horror franchise Scream. Scream, the true story aired in 2022, and it explores the horrifying story of Danny Rawlings, who was also known as the Gainesville Ripper. In 1989, Rawlings killed 8 college students over the span of 10 months. He claimed he was possessed by a demon called Gemini. Rawlings was already in prison for robbery charges in 1990 when 5 of his victims' bodies were discovered by the cops and subsequently linked him to the murders. One of the victims was even decapitated. This guy's brutal. I have to say, Ghostface may keep returning, but the murder sprees are usually done in a few days. If Rawlings wasn't already in jail, how long would it have taken authorities to actually capture him? If at all. Truthfully though, Danny Rowling's murder spree is horrifying. Otherwise, this documentary is, I'm not going to say horrifyingly bad, but it's pretty bad. Danny Rowling was executed in 2006, so Scream the True Story actually follows paranormal investigator Steve Shippey and psychic medium Cindy Kaza as they tried to communicate with Danny's spirit. Wow. It's not uninteresting, just clearly staged. I also think the dramatic reenactments really undercut any truth behind Danny Rowling's story, because they are very cringe. If any viewers can recommend other documentaries on the Gainesville Ripper, would appreciate it, because the story sounds creepy as hell. Otherwise, catch Scream the True Story on Max. It's very much a shame that it's just about the paranormal side now. Number 6. American Murders, The Family Next Door. American Murders, The Family Next Door debuted on Netflix in September of 2020. At the time of release, it was the all-time most streamed documentary on Netflix with 52 million views in the first month. Or at least 52 million accounts started the documentary. American Murder was met with praise from critics and even nominated for a BAFTA TV award for Best Single Documentary. The story is centered around the Wilson family murders that occurred in Frederick, Colorado in 2018. Those who know the story know that Chris Wilson killed his wife and his 2 daughters because at least part of him may have resented his wife, but also the documentary suggests he was a sociopath. However, American Murders follows a narrative structure close to found footage mystery, which made it more engaging but also feel less real for me, because we've been inundated with found footage films for over 15 years now. The subgenre employed techniques to mimic amateur filmmaking for added realism. Now those techniques have become so commonplace they are a part of the language of mainstream media. At any rate, American Murder is constructed with personal footage, phone calls, text and social media posts, as well as police footage and records. All these elements are fashioned into not just a regular documentary, but a story that instead resembles a low-budget Hollywood film. American Murder also shares social media and high-profile commentators' reactions to the aftermath of the Wilson murders, which set the internet on fire at the time. If American Murder, The Family Next Door was a fictional film, I'd say it's addressing how people casually throw their opinions of murderers or really anything that requires expertise in the digital landscape only to dilute the objective facts and breed conspiracy. As a documentary though, it almost contributes to that problem. But I guess we are also doing that as we're telling you to go and stream it only on Netflix. Number 7. Beware the Slender Man. Now I know technically that the culprits in this documentary are not serial killers, but Beware the Slender Man is a riveting showcase about a terrifying, near-lethal assault. But first, let me give you a little background on Slender Man. The haunting figure has become one of the most prominent pieces of lore that came from creepypasta. The creepypasta website launched in 2008, but many regard 2001's Ted the Carver as the first creepypasta. A creepypasta is basically an eerie lore or urban legend that has circulated the internet for years. Many made their rounds on the very early days of message boards. When the official creepypasta website launched in 2008, all those scary stories, photos, videos, etc. had a central location spot for rabid consumption. Slender Man is allegedly a tall, slender humanoid that wears a suit and has no face. He allegedly stalks his victims, sometimes for years, before killing them, and is often portrayed with tendrils. His first appearance is a photoshopped photo by Eric for a contest in 2009. As Dr. Trevor J. Blank puts it, Slender Man is the modern-day boogeyman. 2016's Beware the Slender Man is about two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Gazer, who lured their friend Peyton Bella Lawthor into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. If that isn't horrifying enough, their reason was to sacrifice her to Slender Man. All this happened in 2014 in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is just notorious for murderers Ed Gein, Ted Bundy, Rittenhouse. Not sure why, regardless, Beware the Slender Man delves into the phenomenon of Slender Man. You can catch the acclaimed, unnerving documentary on Max, YouTube, Sling, Amazon, and Fandango. Okay. Number 8. Ed Gein, the Ghoul of Plainfield. One of Wisconsin and the world's most notorious serial killers. Yes, as I've mentioned, my home state has more than one, and this one is Ed Gein. Gein is in fact so prolific, he is the inspiration for many iconic horror villains, including Norman Bates from Psycho to Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as well as Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs. The short documentary Ed Gein, The Ghoul of Plainfield was actually included in the DVD special feature for the 2003 The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ed Gein grew up in Plainsville, Wisconsin, also known as the Great Dead Heart of Wisconsin. Gein grew up in the early 1900s, isolated in the oppressive household with an overbearing mother. Gein is primarily known for his twisted grave robbing of women's graves, but did murder a handful of people in the 1950s. The horrifying aspect of Gein is that he would craft things from these deceased body parts, including skin suits he would wear. Ed Gein, The Ghoul of Plainfield covers Ed Gein's basics and packs an unsettling wallop in its short time span, so watch it on YouTube. He was very messed up. I've watched documentaries on him. Crazy guy. Number 9. Dr. Death, Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman is one of Britain's most notorious serial killers. Harold Shipman was a doctor and he was directly responsible for the death of over 250 of his patients. Dr. Death, Harold Shipman is a British documentary released in 2018. This would have aired around the 20th anniversary of Shipman's arrest in 1998. The documentary features brand new interviews from detectives that worked on the case, and it's compelling and succinct. The documentary chronicles Shipman's murders throughout his long career. So many are speculative because Shipman died saying nothing about them and acted in complete denial about the murders. Harold Shipman typically killed his victims by giving an overdose on morphine, which doesn't sound like the worst way to go. But opioid overdosing can actually be immensely painful. It can include gastric pain, vomiting, and shortness of breath. Dr. Shipman began his career in 1974 as a general practitioner. In 1975, he was caught forging prescriptions for himself as he was an addict. After a stint at rehab, he built his reputation as a doctor starting in 1977. Dr. Death, Harold Shipman is sincerely horrifying because doctors take an oath and are some of the most trusted and relied on professions in our society. Our lives are literally in their hands. Now, Dr. Shipman's case is an exception to the rule, but it did sow distrust between medical professions and the public. And then the exception to the rule is used by idiots to fashion ignorant conspiracy theories, and that's why they have RFK Jr. and measles outbreaks. Anyway, watch Dr. Death on Amazon and Apple TV. No idea how they've linked those two, that's crazy. Number 10. Martina Cole's Lady Killer. Amelia Dyer. Most mass murderers and serial killers are white males, but every now and then we get a female one who does something truly horrific. The most infamous is Aileen Wuornos, the prostitute who killed men. She's had several documentaries and even an Academy Award-winning film, Monster, revolve around her. A female-centric British docuseries called Martina Cole's Lady Killers features many of the infamous feminine murderers. Season 1, Episode 2 from 2008, which is about 45 minutes, focuses on Amelia Dyer, also known as the Baby Killer. Amelia Dyer was a Victorian era serial killer who was given newborns to be put up for adoption, and she was given money to do so. Instead, she kept the money, wrapped the babies in a package, and threw them in the river. She did this for 30 years. Killing an estimated 400 babies before they finally got arrested at 56. Martina Coles is a crime writer, and lady killer Amelia Dyer sees Coles investigate the life of Amelia Dyer. Victorian England was strict, classist with widespread poverty. 50% of babies died anyway. There was no social programs, and babies born out of wedlock were often abandoned. What's horrifying about this lady killer documentary isn't just the baby murdering, but it's how it's a direct result of classism and the lack of social safety nets. You can stream Marina Cole's Lady Killer, Amelia Dyer on Amazon. Oh, I've watched her. She is crazy. Very sad story. Thanks for checking out the video. Did we leave any films off the list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter, also known as X, at Studio Fat, or chat with us at Discord, linked below. Make sure to check out our very own merch store at fatninja.shop. All proceeds go towards our next film project, so we greatly appreciate it. I have been your host, Sarah. Thank you again for being here. Take care. Have a beautiful day.